Liam Mateo. He looked just like the hubby. He had the same nose, the same eyebrows, the same eyes, and his little mouth. It was like a mini him. It was so cute.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Geneviève, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about your sweet little Liam. So thank you so much for coming on. Just to kind of get started, tell us a bit about yourself and who you are and where you guys are located, what your family looks like right now.
Yeah, so we are in Las Vegas. My hubby and I met here about 10 years ago and kind of settled in. And the family is us, he and I, and our dog Hula, our cat Captain, and our son Liam.
Wonderful. And just a little bit of reference. At the time of our recording right now, how long ago was Liam born?
He was born April 11th, so that was 5 days ago. Was a year.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, it's so new still. So thank you for coming on again. I just can't thank you enough. And what do you and Rob like to do in your spare time? What kind of things float your boat and just make you happy?
Well, in the pre-pandemic era, we
Yep.
traveled quite a bit. We
Awesome.
both really love traveling and exploring new places and eating new cuisines. And it was something we were really looking forward to sharing with Liam. And we both like to garden and go hiking with the dog. And we both read quite a bit. And I guess I just really liked running a lot. I used to run marathons.
Amazing.
Yeah, so just
You
small
guys,
little things, I guess.
you guys are so active and out there. Now, where's some place that you guys have just absolutely loved traveling to?
Oh, that's a tough one. We've had many debates on this. I think we both agree on Turkey. I think we both really
Awesome.
love Turkey and Greece.
Yeah.
I thought Peru was fabulous. He likes Ukraine a lot. He's there
Oh,
a lot for business. So, now with things
yeah.
going on in Ukraine, we're doing our best to donate when we can and support whenever we can. And yeah, so
That's amazing. I
he's
have a
got a lot of love for Ukraine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I just think that the fact that you guys were like, we're ready to share it with Liam, and I good on you, because traveling with kids is that's always good fun. So
Yeah. Yeah. I had already prepped, a little board of like, okay, here are the tips for traveling with the
with the
baby.
baby. That's awesome. It's so great.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. So it has been just a little over a year at the time of this recording. And you guys, I just want to make sure your family is from Las Vegas as well, in that area.
No, our families are in Northern and Southern California.
Okay.
So like I shared, we met here and then kind of went out into the world, and we were together for 10 years. And then we came back to Vegas and got married here and settled here. And so I guess you can say what happens in Vegas pretty much follows you the rest of your life, because we met here, we live here, but we're kind of on our own out here. So yeah, that, makes some things difficult and some
Yeah.
things easier. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'm sure we will definitely get into that. And so so tell me a little bit about the pregnancy. Were you guys planning on getting pregnant, or was this a little bit of a surprise for you?
Yeah, it was I guess a mix of both, because we had planned very early on that we wouldn't have naturally born children. We had planned to either adopt or foster or
Oh,
do something
really?
different. Yeah, that was the plan. And I think sometimes you get a little older and you see people with other experiences and you think to yourself, well, I want to give myself a shot. And I had experienced some challenges in my youth with my reproductive health. And
Mm,
so, you know, I wanted at least to have the opportunity to see what would happen.
okay.
And so I had a conversation with Rob about that, and we were both open to, seeing what happened. And we got pregnant in a couple of months. And I was so excited. I, felt in my gut, like, this is it. Like, this is going to work out. And I told Rob, and he was like, okay, are you sure? so, so I think it took him a minute to kind of, let it sink in that, like, yeah, this is actually happening. But I studied women's reproductive health in school, so I'm very aware of the data and the numbers. And so, I was filled with joy, but very aware that's not a guarantee. A pregnancy is not a guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
So,
a big deal that you were because a lot of women do not have those statistics. Like they are
right,
always
right.
completely blindsided. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit of like just awareness is really good, I think. So
Yeah, yeah. I think what was surprising to me was even with the awareness and with the data and
mhm,
research under my belt, that it was still just completely
yeah.
a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the pregnancy itself was beautiful. I had just finished running a marathon when we got pregnant, so I was, in excellent shape, and
Yeah.
I kept running throughout my pregnancy, and was super healthy, and talked to Liam all the time. And,
Hmm.
we left the first few appointments, the prenatal appointments, and I would say things like, Liam, you did so good. I'm so proud of you. And I would talk to him in Spanish so that, one parent, one language, we had a plan. And so, um, yeah, it was really just a very joyful pregnancy. I got to know his schedule and his movements really well. And I felt him really early on.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so that was really wonderful. I had the times of days where I knew he'd be moving and kicking, and I made sure he listened to plenty of like Latina music and
You're like, he's got to move.
yeah, plenty of salsa and reggaeton. I just made sure that, he'd come out of the womb dancing, or at least that's how I imagined it. So it was a really beautiful pregnancy.
That is awesome. And so you kind of mentioned this that you were talking to him and you guys had kind of decided on his name pretty early. So did you find his
Yeah,
gender out pretty early on then?
we did. I have so much to say about
Please, let's
what
hear
what
it.
they classify as, you know, geriatric pregnancy. I have many thoughts on this,
Yeah.
but I guess I'd say I'm a little older. According to the medical community, I don't think it's that bad. I'm only 35, but
Yeah. It's
yeah.
ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. And so because of my age and also because of my history, it was recommended that we do some testing, and
Mm,
I was all for it. I really believe in data and numbers. And so, yes, give me more information. Let me make an informed decision. So we did some testing, and we found out the sex is part of that testing. So,
yes. Okay.
but his name was something we had picked, pie in the sky, actually more than that, 12 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, when we had just kind of started dating. It'd been maybe about a year. We said, if we ever had a family, like, what would that look like? And well, if we had a boy, I think, what would we name him? And we used to do this thing where we'd sit in a movie theater and watch the name scroll
Oh,
after the movie was over
we
to try and
totally
pick
do
a
that
name.
too.
Yeah, so we came across Liam one time and we're like, that's it. Like hands down, if we ever had a boy, that he would be named Liam.
Oh, that is so cool.
When we found out the baby was a boy, it was like, well, that's done.
We've already determined this.
Name is picked. Yeah.
That is so cute. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so then you guys found out pretty early, and I think you can usually get that test between 10 to 12 weeks. It's like pretty early.
Yeah, 9 to 12. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's really early. Yeah.
So you knew already that he was going to be a boy, and so you kept calling him Liam, which I love. I think that's just a fun way that he was named, and everything was looking good. Were you able to besides like the anatomy scan, did you get to see him on an ultrasound or anything like that?
Yeah. So we got to see him, and I certainly felt him plenty, and he was really active. And that was actually the pregnancy happened during the pandemic. So
Right.
it was kind of one of those moments where, when everyone else was sheltering in place, I was still going out into the world, and we were having ultrasounds, but Rob was only joining me for some of them because of the regulations that they had, because of masking and
Right.
just minimalization of having people in offices. So it was a tricky time, it was,
Yeah.
but we got to see him, and for the appointments where I was alone, they usually have signs like no photos, no videos, and
You're like, snap.
the technician was like, okay, you can take like a little video and show your
Oh,
husband.
oh,
So
good.
we were really lucky. We have some videos of him moving around, and there was this one ultrasound, he just kind of kept curling up, and the tech kept saying, I can't get his measurements, he's not straightening out. And I spoke to him in Spanish, and I was like, straighten out, sweetie. Like, I need you to we just need to get these measurements. And you could see him just kind of straightening out. And
Oh,
yeah, it was really lovely.
he's listening to his mama. That's good.
Yeah. I like to think so.
Yeah. uh, that's so sweet. Okay, so Rob wasn't able to go to some of those, but it sounds like he was able to go to a couple of visits with you, or
Yeah. He made it to the ones, he was allowed to go to,
yeah,
and to the ones that he could. And he got to hear the heartbeat and see Liam move. And I think that just helped make it all the more real for him.
yeah. Were there any concerns, or was he just looking pretty healthy?
He was looking really healthy. There was a little bit of concern about his heart development pretty early on, but he caught right up. It was really
Oh,
just
good.
a little blip. Other than that, like I said, I studied reproductive health. So I'm always like looking at these scans, like checking the fluid levels and
Yeah.
checking, because I know what that means. Like if that means this. And so I felt pretty good about what I was seeing, and I felt
Hmm.
pretty good about what the technicians were sharing.
Hmm.
So he was pretty healthy the whole time.
Oh, good.
Up until our last scan, which was about 2 to 3 weeks before he was born.
Okay. So everything was going, and you were feeling good too.
Yeah, I felt great. I was still, like I said, I was still running,
Hmm.
still eating well, still gardening, and just doing my thing. We even took a little trip up to Northern California and visited some family and
Oh,
stayed
good.
by the sea. And, we got to squeeze in a little trip, Corona style.
I know, as
you
best as
know,
you can.
yeah, like seeing family and, staying like 10
I
feet apart
know.
and doing a picnic, it's just, so it was good to at least, be there and know, Liam was with
Yeah,
us. So yeah.
that's great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how it progressed through the pregnancy. You said that you got to see him about 2 weeks before, and so yeah, tell me a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah. So we went to that scan and everything looked great.
And
And
which week were you on that scan?
yeah, so that's another thing. So, the medical community measures it by your menstruation date, right? So,
Right.
I know when I was ovulating, and I know when we conceived, and I know that that date was wrong that they were using. So,
Okay.
on the medical chart, I was at that point about 22 weeks.
Okay.
I knew I was closer to 24 weeks.
Gotcha.
So, so that was the last scan we had. And then right after that, I mean, it was a normal weekend, you know. Friday night, Rob and I usually do pizza and a movie at home, and we had pizza and a movie, and I felt a little tightness. And you know, when it's your first pregnancy,
Yeah.
you're not sure what you're feeling.
Mhm.
You're wondering, and like I said, you know, even studying what I study, it's still kind of, when it's a first time, it's just questionable.
Yeah. Well, and
And
you've never experienced it. You've never felt it yourself. I mean, you can
right,
read about somebody's
you can
experience.
read,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. But it's a totally different thing when you feel it yourself. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I definitely felt some pressure. And I remember telling Rob, you know, it feels like I need a poop from the front. Like, it's just like that was the pressure and the sensation.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it was weird. So I sat down and, you know, took the evening super chill and relaxed a bit. And then it went away, and that was it, and didn't give it another thought. Um, Saturday morning, woke up, did a little gardening, and felt it again.
Hmm.
And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just get off my feet and have some water. And sat on the couch and watched the longest movie on earth. You know, Gone with the Wind is very, very long.
Oh, yes.
It's a very, very long
Yes.
movie. But I figured it would keep me sitting in one place for, you know, long enough to kind of relax.
Yeah.
And so did that. And then in the evening, I started feeling the tightness again. And
So when you were watching the movie before, it kind of, the feeling kind of went away
it
after
went
you.
away.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
At this point, that was, you know, chart wise, 24 weeks.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those moments where you think to yourself in retrospect, like, what if I would have done something differently than what I did? Right.
Yeah.
It's such a hard moment to think about. But I just kind of kept relaxing and kept drinking water and ate. And, you know, they were so sporadic. These sensations were so sporadic. And of course, they were Braxton Hicks. I
Mhm.
thought to myself, you know, they come in 30-second intervals, and then half an hour to an hour later again, and then, you know, 5 minutes later, and then 36 minutes later, and they'd be 10 seconds long, and then 1 minute long, and then
So
2 seconds
all over.
long. So it's just so sporadic.
Yeah.
It was really hard to concretely say, okay, this is labor. And it was also kind of hard to concretely say, okay, these are Braxton Hicks.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
so I just decided, okay, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm clearly not feeling well. I'm just going to go to bed. So went and laid down. By this time, it might have been 8:30, 9ish or so.
Mhm.
I woke up around 1 o'clock with what was very clearly a contraction.
Oh.
Um, and that was when I knew I was in labor. And that was when I knew I was in active labor. So I, you know, classical signs of labor, went to the bathroom, thought I had to go to the bathroom, wasn't that, then felt like I needed to throw up. And then, you know, my water broke right after that. So it
Oh.
was a progression that happened in about 10 minutes. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So it happened really, really fast. As soon as my water broke, you know, Rob was already awake by this point. And I looked at him right in the eyes, and I said, we need to go. We need to go to the hospital. Um, we live about 2 minutes from the closest hospital. We
Yeah.
literally live down the street.
Yeah.
And so got in the car, threw on the first clothes I could, and you know, headed to the hospital. And got out of the car, Went into the hospital. It was I I feel like I was shouting. I'm in labor. I'm 24, 25 weeks. I was expecting people to rush at me to come save my baby,
Yeah.
and that didn't happen. It's a hospital. They see horrible things all the time, and people were very calm, and I just it didn't match what I was feeling, and I
Yeah.
remember just thinking my baby's in danger, my baby's in danger. And so they, do the thing they do. They wheel you off to triage and they ask you all these questions. And by then I could still feel the water coming out of me. And I knew that I was losing a lot of amniotic fluid. It was just the most scared I've ever been. Um, and Sorry, there's just that night was so horrible. There's so much drama. There's so much trauma to process. So when I was in triage, they saw that I was in labor. I was already 4 centimeters dilated. And they talked to us about our options. And we determined that the best alternative would be to try to keep me pregnant, to try to keep Liam inside. And so, here comes the onslaught of magnesium and steroids. And I can't remember what the other drug was they gave me, but it was 3 of them. And I'm sure you've heard, and I've heard other mothers talk about this, when they give you magnesium, your skin is on fire.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was on fire. And at that point, it must have been around 2. So it all happened so fast.
Yeah.
And so we stayed in that situation for a little while. I was still contracting. I was still in active labor, and the contractions by then were very much getting closer and closer, and were very predictable.
Hmm. And
So it got to the point, sorry.
were you dilated? Were you still dilating? Like you were at 4 when you came in.
Yeah.
Was it still progressing?
Yeah, it was progressing the whole time. So by the time I felt the contractions were back to back, they checked me, and I was about 8 centimeters then. And then the nurse was keeping an eye on Liam's heart, and they were checking on him. And when we first came in, it was the first thing I said, I want to see him. I want to see him, because I couldn't really feel him.
Yeah.
Because of all the loss of water. And he was still moving. He was still active. They had a strong heartbeat, and they were like, okay, he's lost, the backwater. Well, actually, he's lost the front waters, but he's got backwater. So he's still got some in there. So when, fast forward and my contractions were back to back, I couldn't see him anymore. They had taken the ultrasound machines away, and they had the sound machine on his heart, so I could hear his heartbeat.
Yeah.
And for the fetal monitoring, and I could hear, like normal labor, it'll, heartbeat will go down during a contraction, come back up, and it'll go down and come back up. But his weren't coming back up. And so I looked at the nurse when I noticed it, because I'm, of course, hyper aware and listening to everything.
Yeah.
And the nurse looked at me, and it's just one of those looks you never forget,
Yeah.
It's when you both know things are really bad. And so she called the OB, and the OB came in and let us know that they needed to take him out. And she took one look at me and said, "Stop pushing." And I, in active labor, your body's going to do what your body needs to do. And if Liam needed out, then my body was going to try to get him out.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, I'm not pushing. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
So they wheeled us into the operating room, and I could feel him giving some really strong kicks. And I feel now that was him just wanting out. And that kills me. So they rolled us into the operating room, and there was a lot of screaming and a lot of shouting, and it was an emergency cesarean, of course. So, the NICU team flew down, and it was so loud. It was so, so loud. And there was so much chaos in the room, and people were just kind of running around. And I remember they put the drape up, and that was the last I saw. And so I had to kind of, like, I remember thinking, I can't move, I can't see, I can't do anything. All I have is hearing. All I can do is listen. And so I remember thinking, okay, you need to be very mindful about what you're hearing, just in case something happens, or I don't know. I guess that's just maternal instinct, right?
Yeah.
What can I do? Well, I can hear. And when they took him out, I just remember the overwhelming silence. It was like someone had turned the radio off. It was just instant. And that's when I knew he was dead. And everything was great until it just wasn't. So it was, like I said, it was just, even knowing all the data I know, it's just such a shock. So they worked on him, tried to get him breathing. And I remember that was about 30 minutes. They worked on him for about 30 minutes. And I just remember when they pulled him out, it was such there was so much desperation in the room. And it was such a violent sensation for me. I could feel the pulling and the tugging in a very intense way. So it's just, I think that impressed on me how bad things were. So when I didn't hear anything, it was just quiet for 30 minutes. And the NICU physician came over and popped his head around the curtain and told me, they've been working on him for 30 minutes and haven't had a response. And what would I like to do? Would I like to keep trying? And I just remember looking at him and saying, leave him alone. He's been through so much. He's been through so much. I just want you to leave my son alone. And I think as a mother, you want the best for your kid, you want the best for your baby. And I just didn't want him to be put through anymore. It was such a hard night. So everyone, once I said that, the NICU team left and then closed me up, and Rob was in the room the whole time with me.
It just, oh, that was another thing. I remember I couldn't see anything, right? So I just kept looking at Rob, and he was looking at me. And we had always talked about if we ever had kids that we would have one rule, eyes on the kid. Like, just always keep eyes on the kid, like no matter what, eyes on the kid. So I was looking at him, and he would look at me and then look in the direction of where Liam would be. And he would look at me and then look in the direction for Liam. And when he saw Liam, I remember Rob looked at me and was like, I saw a foot. And I just remember thinking, I know those feet. I know those feet so well. I'm glad he got to see him at least some. So yeah, the NICU team left, and they closed me up, and that took some time. And then everyone cleared out of the room except Rob and I and Liam and a nurse. And the nurse was letting us know what the next steps were and where they were going to move us. And I saw that my son was in the corner. And I asked what was going to happen. Where is he going to go? And the nurse said, oh, someone will come collect him. And I just couldn't. I wasn't going to leave my son there. And I didn't want some stranger wheeling him somewhere. So I looked at Rob, and Rob said that he would wheel him wherever we were going. And so they took us to a recovery room for observation, and Liam came with us. And I've heard so many merciful, supporting acts of kindness from other women from your podcast. And I'm so glad they had those experiences, but I didn't. And the hospital we were at was, although down the street, not compassionate. And so we were in the recovery room, and it was just us. It was just us. And a nurse came in and asked if we wanted a photo. And I don't know, I think my brain broke at that point, because I thought she was asking if we wanted an autopsy photo or some sort of, I don't know, something different. We got footprints at that point. He got measured, and he was 14 inches long. So long.
He was so long.
Yeah. Well, he was on the chart 24 weeks, but I know he was closer to 26 weeks. And so I'm like, that's about the right length. But he just was, if you ever meet my husband, he's 6'3" and tall and lanky. And honestly, Liam was like a little mini him. It was just so same face, long, lanky limbs, these really little long fingers. He's just, and they handed him to us, and I remember thinking to myself, I just want to see my son. So I unwrapped him, and I just absorbed him and looked at him and memorized his little face and his little hands and his little belly and his little feet. I spent so much time just staring at his feet. And he was done. I remember thinking, I remember just being kind of surprised. Again, the data, it's like you read these things, but it's just so different when they're in your arms. And it seemed like the only thing he was really missing was fat. He's so skinny. But he was just so freaking cute, and I just couldn't believe how much adoration and love and heartbreak I was feeling all at once. And so they told us they were going to move us to another room to recover for the rest of our stay, because it was an emergency cesarean, and so there was a lot of things they had to keep an eye on. So they moved us again, and again Rob took the little infant cart and wheeled Liam with us, and they put us in the labor and delivery ward. And I guess they were shy on staff, so they didn't put us in a separate wing or anything. We were right in the thick of
everything.
The recovery of labor and delivery. So I think I mentioned my brain broke, because I don't think you're just so not in your right mind when that happens.
And so quickly too. Like the fact that you guys got there so quickly, had an emergency C-section, and then your son was gone. Like it just happened so fast. Like of course you would be in shock, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember, so we're in the recovery room in labor and delivery, and I could hear all the babies crying, all the newborn babies crying. I could hear mothers waking up in the middle of the night to feed them and sing to them. And I could hear lullabies, and I could hear babies cooing and getting soothed. And I mean, if that doesn't break your brain and heart and soul, I don't know what would. But we had our time with Liam there. I remember asking the nurse in the new room how much time we'd have with him. I don't think she gave me an answer, but I think she did say how much time we would have until he started physically changing.
Okay.
And I remember that being the thing in my head where it was like, okay, that'll be the time to let him go. So we had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 hours with him. And I had a really hard time holding him. I wanted him really close, and I wanted him really near, and I wanted to be able to see him, and I felt very protective of him. But I personally had a really hard time holding him. And I wish I had held him more. I think about that all the time. Rob was so great. He held him quite a bit. He held him a lot. And I just remember thinking how beautiful it was to see a father with his son. And when you're in those circumstances and you're kind of on your own, and it's coronavirus and no one's visiting and hospitals aren't letting anyone. It was just so, I don't know how else to say it other than we just felt so on our own.
Yeah.
And the hospital staff just wasn't trained on bereavement or
At all.
no. A little later I'll share, but ultimately I found out that they hadn't been trained in 8 years on bereavement, prenatal bereavement, or infant loss or stillbirth. So it very much felt like we were on our own, and just didn't know what next steps were.
Yeah.
Didn't know what options were available. Didn't know what our rights were as parents. I mean, you don't get excited about a pregnancy and start planning a funeral or a memorial plans. You don't think to yourself, I should probably have a backup plan for this. It's not something
Nope.
you instinctively do.
Nope. You have hope. You have hope that all will be fine and all will be good. Yeah, you never plan for this.
Right. And so if there's no one there, letting you know what you can do, giving you options on what you might want to do, it's just very hard to have the wherewithal to think of those things, even to Google it. It's like, I'm such a researcher. I'm such a data-driven person. Like under normal circumstances, I would have said, okay, this is the time to research. But you're so broken. It's just not where your mind is, at least not for me. So we just kept him with us. It just felt like the only thing I could do is just to keep him with us. And Rob spent some time with him, and I think for me that was a big comfort.
Yeah.
And then when time was up, nurse came in and asked which funeral home or cremation facility we'd like to send him to, and I just was like, how am I supposed to pick that?
Yeah, it's horrible. Oh. And that's all she did. She just asked you where.
Yeah, she gave us a list of local funeral homes and crematories and said, where would you like to send your son, who in my head I'm like, who was just born like a second ago and died a second ago, and now I'm supposed to let him go. It's just impossible. It's just impossible. So I asked the nurse which one is most familiar with this kind of situation. Because I think somewhere in my mind, I was thinking, okay, whoever's the most familiar knows the paperwork that needs to get done on the back end, and then I'll be able to have my son back as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, that was all I wanted. I just wanted my son with me. And, as hard as other things were, like I couldn't really sing, I couldn't really hold him, I was just so paralyzed. But I just wanted him with me. So she pointed one out, funeral home out, and so that's who we selected, because if they were the most familiar, then it would be the quickest turnaround and I would have my son back. So that was the hospital recovery part, I guess. After that, they called the funeral home. They came and got him, and it was really indelicate. I mean, I saw them wrap him and take him, and like I said, there's lots of compassion and kindness out there, and unfortunately, in those days, we just didn't get much of it. Like I said, there's a lot of trauma about that
Yeah.
day that I'm still working through. So they took him, and God, it just felt like someone had ripped out my heart. And I wailed, and I heard a voice, and I thought, what is that sound? And that was me. And it was a horrible soundtrack at the hospital because you'd hear wailing, and then you'd hear babies crying, and then just impossible. And at that time, they had told me they would want to keep me for recovery. And I remember telling Rob, I can't stay here listening to these babies, listening to these moms. My brain is breaking. My brain is actively breaking. And we decided, we'd do whatever we needed to do to get me up and out of there.
Yeah.
So, um, I sent Rob out for nutritious food because I knew I wasn't going to get better on Jello.
Yep. Yep.
They're like, have Jello. I'm like, how am I supposed to get up and start walking on Jello?
Yeah. That's not going to work out for me.
Yeah. So I sent him out for food and walked as soon as I could and tried to tick off all the boxes they made me tick off, and got released from the hospital less than 24 hours later.
Oh my goodness. You just
like,
had an emergency C-section.
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, one of those things where I couldn't
Yeah.
stay in that room.
No.
I just couldn't do it. So Liam was born on Sunday at 4:19 in the morning, and I was released from the hospital Monday. So I guess it was a little over 24 hours. So I was released Monday afternoon,
Okay.
just the next day. Yeah. So we got home and, come home to a crib set up and baby space set up. And I had the brilliant idea of setting a little nursery nook in our bedroom, in our master bedroom, so it would be easy to get up in the middle of the night and feed him, and I wouldn't have to go very far. And so everything was in our master bedroom. Just walking into that room, it's just a unique kind of shattering. I think that's all I have to say about that day.
Geneviève, did you call your family? Did you guys call your families while you were in the hospital?
I couldn't do very much. I didn't even think about calling my family. For starters, they're in Southern California.
Right.
My best friend lives in Denver. My other best friend lives in Holland. So I don't think it even occurred to me to reach out to anyone. I honestly, I just held on to Rob for dear life. I think Rob called some close friends of his best friends, but I didn't. At least I don't remember doing it. Not until I got home, at least. I don't think I reached out to anyone from the hospital.
It was so fast too. So, yeah. Just went through this most traumatizing experience and was not on the receiving end of a lot of compassion or any sort of protocol to help anybody through this. It just is baffling to me, and just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
And
I was just thinking about that recently, about how I, I can't think of one good thing from that night. It was just horrific.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get in touch with the funeral home then after that?
Right. So, yes, I think it was the next day. So, when I woke up Tuesday, of course, my instinct was, I want my son.
Yep.
I want my son back.
Mhm.
And so I started calling the hospital. Who do I need to call? Started calling the funeral home. Who do I need to talk to? What do you need? And there's so much administrative back end stuff we just don't know about.
Yeah.
And so just calling around took me a couple of hours
Oh.
just to figure out what needed to happen and who needs to get what sent where. And it's different in every hospital, and then it's different in every state, and
Yep.
then it's different in every country. And
Yep.
so there's no instructional, this is how you get the remains of your child back.
Yeah.
So I called the funeral home. We set up an appointment, and I had Rod drive me there the following day to complete paperwork, and we did that, and we decided on cremation. We picked an urn, and Rob picked a really beautiful little one. And I remember looking at it and thinking, is he gonna fit in that? Because it's so small. But it was important to me that, traveling as much as we do, we've moved around quite a bit. I don't know where we'll be in a few years, and I want to make sure I have my son with me. So there was a little bit of a mix up at the funeral home. There was another family with the same last name there
Oh.
who also had a baby boy who had passed.
Oh.
And so the mix up was which family was there for which baby.
Oh.
And so I won't shy away from saying I got upset and demanded to see my baby,
Yeah.
because I spent plenty of time absorbing him and looking at him and knowing and memorizing his face.
Yeah.
And I know I'd recognize my son. And so they laid him out, and I went and I checked to make sure that that was my son.
Mm-hmm.
And it was. And I guess that was something I was it was a small mercy, I guess, because I got to see him again and got to spend time with him again. And it opened this opportunity where I learned, oh, I can see my son again. And
Because you didn't think you could, did you?
right,
Yeah. Okay.
right. I didn't know it was
A thing.
a thing.
Like the funeral director didn't say anything that you could see him again or anything.
Nope. No,
Huh.
none of the nurses mentioned it. None of the funeral staff mentioned it. So once they let me see him again and I got to spend time with him again,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I can see him again. And it took a couple of days for the paperwork from the hospital to get to the funeral home and,
Yeah.
all of the background stuff. But I was calling every day to make sure that it happened like as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And I'm sure Courtney at the hospital, who's in charge of the certificate desk, hates me. That's okay.
Yep.
We finished the paperwork and left the funeral home that day and had a plan. And a couple days later, I was in the shower and I just burst into tears, which, well, frankly, I hadn't stopped crying, but
Yeah.
still.
Mhm.
And I just couldn't believe that I never gave my son anything. He was in a funeral home. Just, it's a horrible thing to think about when your son passes away. Where are they? What are they? I mean, so I had bought a swaddle. Rob's favorite animal is the sea turtles. And I had bought a little sea turtle swaddle for Liam. I kid you not, like 3 days before I went into labor. And I told Rob, I want to see my son. I need to swaddle my son. And he said, okay. So we called the funeral home and asked to see our son again, because now I know I could. And
Yeah.
And Rob drove me back to the funeral home. And, I don't know if you've ever tried walking after cesarean, but
It's no easy feat. Yeah, you're probably not doing well.
yeah, getting shuttled back and forth.
Yeah.
It's you don't care. You just want to see your son.
Yeah.
And so I'm back to the funeral home and swaddled my son. And that's when we were able to take a picture. So we have one picture with
One
Liam.
picture. Yeah.
And that was it. And, by then he had changed a bit. I didn't care. I don't think moms care. And what we did do was on Wednesday or Tuesday, we called our parents and told them what had happened. I don't think I had it in me to talk to anyone before then.
Yeah.
And my parents were amazing. We told them what happened, and my mom said, we'll be there tomorrow.
Oh.
My dad said, we'll see you soon. We'll be there. And they drove up in, less than 24 hours. And so my mom came with us to the funeral home and that last time and got to see Liam.
Oh, good.
When we swaddled him. So it was such a comfort. Because of coronavirus, no one saw me pregnant, right?
Yeah.
I was so at the time I was working in homeless services. So I was still out in the field, but it's no one we knew in our circle saw me.
Yeah.
It was like I went out for work because I had to, but that was it.
And you guys were just staying at home most of the time.
And you're home the rest of the time, exactly, except for doctor's appointments. So no one in our family saw me pregnant. None of our friends really, except for 2, saw me pregnant, and for the whole duration.
Yeah.
So my parents never saw me pregnant.
Yeah.
And when Liam died, we were in our 6th month. And so I was very, very pregnant by then. And it was such a comfort to know someone besides Rob and I got to see Liam.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something I'll always be incredibly grateful for.
Yeah. You just kind of want to make sure that like his life was here. He was born. He existed and there's proof, I guess.
Yeah.
There's proof that he was here. So that's so great that your mom came up. Well, your parents came up and then that she was able to see him.
Yeah, that really meant a lot. And they were really supportive and really great. And my mom is very traditional. That's why we gave Liam Mateo a middle name that was easy to say in Spanish. My parents aren't natural English speakers. And my mom is a bit like your quintessential traditional Mexican woman. And so it was growing up was one of those things where it was like, I'm not, going to be a cook and I'm going to like study all these like women's rights issues. And I was so grateful that my mom was who she is, because she showed up and was like, okay, I will make you the broths you need to heal your body.
Oh,
I will, help you keep up with the house, and we'll make sure that you get your bandages done, and we'll make sure that, whatever we need to have for Liam's memory will be done. And she would just let me talk about Liam until I couldn't talk anymore. And just having that support, and Rob too. I mean, I I don't think I'll ever be able to express how much he kept me afloat and alive. Um, I mean, those middle of the night moments where you just hold on to each other. It's just, there are no words for that kind of support.
yeah.
And I had midwives as well at the time who had seen Liam's pregnancy progress. And I called them, and they were incredible. They, offered to go to the funeral home and take more prints.
Oh,
They, read Liam's report from the night of to make sure that everything, that could have been done was done. And they called me right after and were like, we heard Liam pass. Are you okay? What's happening? Like, just, do you need us to come check on you? And I think having that I mean, the hospital wasn't great, but having a medical team
yes.
that humanized me and my son
Yes.
was just another big part of being able to survive that.
Yeah. Yeah, validating your experience, like, it really does sound like the hospital really failed you guys in the sense that
Yeah.
they didn't even it just didn't feel like they were acknowledging that you are just going through something so horrible and terrible and traumatizing, and they just were like, "Okay." And so yeah, to have that your other team take care of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So,
Yeah.
um, and, it was really wonderful the first time they called and said, we heard about Liam, and just having someone use his name.
Yeah. Yes. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. So, you got to see Liam a couple times at the funeral home, and did they make arrangements then? And did you know when he was going to get cremated and everything, and when you would be able to pick him up and all that jazz?
Yep. So like I said, I was really hell bent on getting him back as soon as I
Hmm.
possibly could. And the average, at least in the valley here in Las Vegas, is about a month to get the paperwork approved
Oh,
and turned around. So 2 weeks to a month. Um, so I was hell bent on making sure that it didn't take that long. Um, and we had Liam back by the following Monday.
oh, wow.
So I just needed to have him with me.
Yeah,
And that was, I think, a whole nother experience, right? Because at least for me, I could not stomach being physically apart from his urn.
yeah.
Like, I recognize it's an urn, but I think I wrote something about that in some of my poetry, where it's like your baby died, but motherhood didn't.
Mm-mm.
And your instinct to want to nurture that baby is so gripping and so consuming. I mean, I went to the grocery store and had him with me. I go to, like, whatever I needed to do, he was with me. And if that made me look like a crazy person, then that's fine. I just couldn't leave my son. Oh my gosh, I had so much milk. I had so much
Oh,
milk.
oh, I'm so sorry. It is.
Um, when we left the hospital, actually, my milk came in like the next day. Like it
Oh,
wasn't even, you read in books and stuff that it's like, oh, it could take a couple
3
days. And
days.
it's like,
Yeah.
nope. My milk was in like as soon as possible.
Oh,
And yeah, the midwives were a huge help there too, because,
oh, good.
I remember thinking, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I worked in nonprofits at the time when Liam was born, and I've worked in nonprofits for forever. So I know there's a nonprofit out there somewhere that, could probably use the breast milk.
Yeah.
And so I remember telling my midwife, I've got a lot of milk right now. I've got a lot coming in. Where can I donate it? Where can I give it? Where can I, you know, how can this be helpful to someone else? And she looked at me, and I will never forget that she looked at me and just, I think, really saw me and said, I think right now you need to focus on you. And I think right now, I don't think you're in the best mental space to be able to do the pumping as often as you'll need to donate it. And I think if you have the capacity to donate and you have the mental and emotional and physical capacity to do it, and you feel like it's the right thing to do, you should do it. But I was so driven by just my instinct of working in nonprofits and working in service to just give without really recognizing how much of a toll it would take.
On you,
Right.
emotionally and physically. I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. So having someone to say, I get where you're coming from, your intention is good, but let's let's put you back together first. Yeah, that was incredibly helpful. So she gave me some tips on how to stop the milk and what I could eat and what I could do, and how to freeze a sports bra. And
So many
holy
tips.
crap, that stuff is cold.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever smelled warm cabbage after it's been frozen.
Yes, I've done that before. That's what I did too. Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
not great.
not the best smell.
I was like, I'm sorry, I smell like a Russian babushka.
it's,
I,
it's horrible, but yeah.
yeah. I know people are going to be like, I can't believe they're laughing about this. I was like, but you get to this point where you're like, I can't believe I'm doing this because
Yes.
you've just gone
Yeah.
through the most horrible experience. And yeah.
Yeah. I really believe, I think it's the safety and caring of the community that gives you that little inch of space to be able to laugh and say, yeah, this was like the worst.
Ever?
The worst ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the recovery, and that's how we got him back home. And at the hospital they let us keep his blankets, and
Oh, good.
we got his little wristband, and just any little proof
Yeah.
we could have that he was our son. And in the state of Nevada, they don't issue certificates of birth resulting in stillbirth.
Oh, they don't? I
No,
didn't know that. Oh.
no. Yeah, Vegas is not the best, most compassionate or kind space to go through this kind of trauma. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of work to be done here, and I hope some of my efforts in the past and future can make an adjustment to that. So
Yeah. Geneviève, it was so nice to hear about your little Liam. A couple last questions. Did you guys end up doing any sort of memorial, or tell me about that?
Yeah. So coronavirus,
Yes.
we did not have any gatherings or anything like that. And I suppose um, having everyone kind of far away was a bit of a factor
Yes.
also. But what we did do was we asked our closest friends and family to write a letter to Liam or a note to Liam, something to him, just expressing what Liam would have, what he was and what he might have been to them.
Yeah.
And they mailed them in, and we got a little memento box that we had personalized for Liam. And we put the letters in the box, and we put, all of his sonogram scans and protected them with like the special protection screens, and put all of that in the box. And we said we would open it on his, what do you even call it? His birthday, his anniversary, his year mark. So on the 11th of this month, we opened the box and sat Liam's urn with us and read all the beautiful, loving words that his family and, aunts and uncles would have said to him. And that was really beautiful and special. And Rob and I aren't religious, but I really hope that wherever Liam is, he felt our love, and he felt the love his family was sending. So he sits in our bedroom now. It's where he would have been.
Yep.
For the first year anyways.
Yep.
And his Lola, which is Lola grandmother in Filipino, and his Lola was knitting him a blanket when he died, and so we have a little blanket swatch that that he sits on, and he's with us every day. And I have my son with me, and we spent his birthday, just working on his legacy projects, and just spent the day thinking about him and talking about how freaking cute he was. And about all of our little favorite things about him. I personally don't like oranges. I don't like donuts. But oh my gosh, I could not get enough of them when I was pregnant with him. So,
oh, really?
we talk about how, like, those are his favorite foods.
That is so cute.
It's just so random. Like, and then, I come from a very traditional Mexican home, and so we celebrate Dia de los Muertos. And so this last year, we, had a little altar for him, and I really loved that. It was an opportunity to, put a little piece of orange and donut out there, and offer that up to him. And just getting, I mean, I remember growing up, in a Latino community, in a Mexican household, you see your parents celebrating Dia de los Muertos, and it's always, older folks. It's always grandpas and grandmas and, aunts and uncles, or great aunts and uncles. And I didn't imagine celebrating Dia de los Muertos with my son, but it's been an odd comfort to be able to have another day in the year where it's specifically just
to remember him,
to think about him, to put his little donut and orange slice out there. And
it's, I think, small comforts,
Yeah.
small ways of being with him and connecting, I think, are just kind of the driving forces.
Yeah. That is amazing. I just that just makes me happy to think you guys setting up a little altar for him and
I'll have to send you a picture.
yeah, I would love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Geneviève, thank you so much. This has been delightful talking to you, and I really just feel I get where you're coming from, and I just am so, so sorry for your loss and for your husband's loss. And is there anything last that you would like to say about your Liam to
Yeah.
us?
He taught me what motherhood and love is. I think having planned to never have my own naturally born children, I don't think I understood love the way your son will teach you love. And he was such an incredible joy and such a beautiful little one to be with all the time, having him in my pregnancy and getting to feel him, getting to know him. That was just such an incredible experience. And I'm so grateful that I got to have that and that I got to see him and how freaking cute he was and how his little feet they were the same. It was like the same little feet I felt from the outside of the belly were the same feet I saw. That was just the coolest. And he, gosh, I can't get over how much he looked like Rob. He just really, he was the light of my life. He still is.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Inter, for all you and Lee do. And I think I just want to add that your podcast was my saving grace in the weeks following. And we can't thank you enough for what you do in Brennan's name and in his honor. And I'm so sorry for your loss too, but I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, we're we're in this together, so
Yeah.
well, thank you again.